What is up, ladies and gents, boys and girls, all you fishaholics? Welcome back to another episode of Big 50 Fishing. I want to thank you guys for tuning into my channel today. I really appreciate it very much. If you're not already subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button. That way you won't miss any of my upcoming content. What we're going to be talking about today is the fall transition, where do bass go, and how to catch them. You got to get the line where to catch them. Y'all come on with us. Alright guys, to start this video off, everyone needs to know when their fall transition starts. Different areas, it can take longer, it can take a couple days, it can take weeks. But everyone should know when their fall transition starts, because it can be some of the best fishing of this time of year that you can possibly get besides when spring starts. How to know your fall transition has begun? It's going to happen during the night. When those temperatures drop down low, that water starts to cool off, those bass are instantly going to know this fall transition is about to happen. If it's chilly for a couple mornings to where you gotta put on a light jacket, put on a hoodie or something like that, the transition has begun. Like I said, it can impact areas differently. Places with a lot of grass, the fall transition will start overnight. It's gonna happen immediately, like clockwork. That grass is gonna start dying off, which means less oxygen in the water, so those bass are going to stick to grass and move. All right, places with a lot of rocks, docks, wood, it's gonna take a little bit longer. It's gonna take a lot longer, like I said, a couple days, couple weeks, something like that. If the grass is dying off when the transition starts, bass will abandon that grass and they're gonna start looking for healthy grass or structure. So if you're fishing a stretch and you can tell that some of that grass is dying off, all right, and you're going down that stretch and you find just some type of structure, rock, old wood, lay down, something like that, those bass are gonna be in that transition from that grass to that hard structure, or at least looking for some good grass, some good oxygenated grass, fresh grass, should I say. All right, those bass are gonna head to hard cover once all the grass is gone. Once all that grass is dead, there's no grass you can find anywhere in the lake, the only thing you should be targeting is hard cover. All right, you should be looking for docks, you should be looking for rocks, lay downs. They're gonna get deep in those lay downs, not just on the outside of it. They find the edges of flats, and they like to be shallow, but they like to find those edges of flats, that way they can have access to deep water and they can have access to shallow water. All right, they can ambush those bait fish or the shad from the deep, or they can push them to the bank in the creeks and the back of pockets, anything like that, and hold those bait fish against that bank. That's what they're gonna be looking for. Shallow bass will be on hard cover on the docks and in laydowns. You shouldn't have to look anywhere else besides grass, docks, and laydowns. You can go offshore. Yeah, there's gonna be a few bass offshore still that might be within that late transitional stage and everything. But to minimize your time, that way you won't be wasting a lot of time. In the fall transition, the only thing that's on my mind is looking for hard cover, looking for laydowns, looking for docks, and looking for fresh grass. All right, guys, so let's talk what do bass do to bait fish. This is not much, it's gonna be a little short segment, but bass like to take bait fish during the fall transition and push them into creek arms, deep creek arms, channels, and the back of pockets. So when you're out on the water and that fall transition has already pretty much got into place and that grass is dying, don't waste your time going anywhere else. The only thing you should be looking for is those creek arms coming off of the main body of water that goes to the back of pockets. Those bass are gonna push all of those bait fish into that creek and into the back of those pockets. That way they won't have to waste a lot of energy out in open water trying to ambush these fish. Those bait fish will be right in front of them. They can catch them in a narrow area. They can hold them in the back of pockets. That's pretty much it when what bass do to bait fish around the fall transition. It's not much at all. It shouldn't be hard. You should be able to get in your boat, bank fishing or whatever, find those little channels in the back of pockets, and you should catch fish. All right, guys, we're gonna start off with some baits that I like to throw during the fall transition. These are gonna be some shallow baits and some deep water baits. So let's get into it. First bait that I like to throw during the fall transition would be a chatterbait. People like to throw the Z-Man, they like to throw the jackhammers. The first bait that I'm gonna throw during the fall transition is a chatterbait. It mimics baitfish, it mimics shad, and you wanna match that color to a shad pattern. So I like to throw white, if you can get that silver in it or some gray in it, maybe some little hints of blue in it, that'll work also. So bait number one would be a chatterbait. You're still gonna target the outside of grass. You still can throw this along laydowns. You can throw it along the side of a dock or something like that, and it'll call those bass out to try to come get this thing. Bait number one, chatterbait. The second bait that I like to throw would be a square bill crankbait. Square bill crankbaits, this allows me to cover water fast. It allows me to hit that mid-range water column. You know, I'm not fishing the top, I'm not fishing the bottom, I'm right in the middle of that water column, depending on the depth of the water that you're fishing. All right, you still want to throw your shad colors, your gizzard shad. You want to match the size of your crankbait to the size of the bait fish in your area. You don't want to go too big, you don't want to go too small. Try to match the size of the bait fish that's in your area. Throw the smaller, like this one here. You want to throw your smaller square bill crankbaits up shallow. You know, those bigger crankbaits, you might get caught up on some stuff like that or whatever. But if you throw that shad, that smaller square bill crankbait up shallow, you can catch a lot of bass. For those bass that like to pin those bait fish against the bank, they don't want to go out to the edge yet or to the drop off yet. So throw that smaller one up there, man, and you can get you some bites. Bait number two, square bill crankbait. My third bait, it was hard between a jerkbait and a walking bait, but I made my third bait the jerkbait. If I go fishing with a jerkbait, I'm still gonna match the shad color. I want something that's gonna produce a lot of flash, maybe the world minnow color, something with a slight brown but flashy in it. This right here is like a green gizzard shad jerkbait. It still produces a little flash, but this one here has that chrome look to it, and when you move it, it has like that rainbow effect flash to it, and in the water with the sunlight, that's gonna be money. You know, they're looking for that bait fish that they can get easy. If they run through some bait fish and injure one of them and that bait fish is just falling slow, like this would in the water, they're gonna come and get it. All right, and then when you twitch it, especially like it's dying, they're gonna come get it. Jerk baits still wanna target outside of grass. The jerk bait is where you can also target the drop-offs. Like I said, for those bass that like to be on a drop-off, not the ones that are shallow, jerk baits can do a lot of damage. Like I said, match the hatch. You can do deep diving jerk baits if you want to get real down off of that drop off, but I like to hit right in that mid range of that drop off. That way I can catch those bass that are sitting right there on the shallow point or right underneath that deep point. Bait number three will be the jerk bait. So bait number four that I like to throw will be some type of walking bait. These right here are the big KVD walking bait, Strike Kings. I would throw the smaller walking baits around this time, but you can get away with the big walking baits depending on what your fishery produces. If your fishery produces big bass, you can get away with these. If they produce, you know, the minimal or the average size bass or whatever, I would throw the smaller ones. You know, that way when they come up and hit it, they can get it for sure. You know, even though it got treble hooks on it, you got 3 treble hooks on here, you're gonna hook them anyway. But if you really want that for sure bite, I would go with a smaller one. All right, with these top water things, you still wanna match the shad color. On cloudy days, I would probably throw like a bone color. And on sunny days, I would throw something with a lot of flash in it, something that has that chrome. This one here has the chrome at the bottom with a little chartreuse on the side, and it has the blue back on it. And this one here is just like a translucent color, and it has a slight little brownish gray color on the top. All right, and those are the 2 walking baits that I would throw. Something that's shad pattern or that bone color, and something with a lot of flash. Bait number 4, walking baits. There's one last bait that I like to throw in the shallow water, and it's a pretty simple bait. It's one of the most universal baits that you can throw when it comes to bass fishing, and that is spinnerbait. Man, spinnerbait around the fall transition, this mimics shad exactly. You got the flashing with the blades. You got a willow leaf on here, Colorado blade. Some people like to throw the double willow leaf, but around this time of year, I would personally throw the double silver willow leaves. I wouldn't throw Colorado blades unless the water is kind of dirty. And if that water's dirty, I'm going to target that structure with the Colorado blades. It puts off a little bit more of a thump in that water. But for long distance casting with a spinnerbait up shallow, I'm going with 2 willow leaves, 2 silver willow leaves. Same thing with the spinnerbaits, you want to match the hatch. This was white and chartreuse. This one that has like white with a little gray tint to it. Something that mimics the shad. Some people have shad that have like a little brown tint to them in the water. So if you can get away with a darker spinnerbait, by all means, go ahead and do that. But for me, I'm gonna stick with something that has that kind of silver and white in it, or white and chartreuse. Last bait, a shallow bass water fishing, spinnerbait. Let's get into some deep water baits for the fall transition. And by all means, I'm starting off with the small 3XD Gizzard Shad Color crankbait. I want something that's small that can get down to the depths for those bass that are out deep. Once that fall transition gets good and going, some of those bass will vacate the shallow premises and they will go deep. They will sit on the bottom of those drop-offs. All right, that's just in case they do want to go back up shallow, they can. But 9 times out of 10, they'll be on the bottom of those drop-offs. So I want to take a small crankbait like this that can dive deep, and I want to throw it at the top of that drop-off, and I want to work that bait down that drop-off to those bass. That way it's in that strike zone longer, and when it gets down to the bottom, it can stay down there for a couple seconds, and then it comes back up. So the first bait that I would throw for deep water bass fishing in the fall transition will be a deep water small crankbait. It's big. It's big, but it's not the biggest. I'm going with the KVD 5XD, 6XD, 8XD, 10XD, depending on how deep your water is. I'm around Toledo Bend. Toledo Bend is a couple hours from me, 3 hours from me. So Toledo Bend has a lot of deep water, a lot. You will never fish the whole Toledo Bend. I'm gonna just put that out there now. And running the 10XD in Toledo Bend, it's easy. It's so deep, you can run a 10XD on those big drop-offs out there and catch hammers. Right here is the 8XD. I'm still gonna mimic shad patterns. All right, this right here is the Summer Sexy Shad. A lot of people throw the green gizzard shad. That's like a good universal color also when it comes to crankbait fishing. All right, I'm gonna match the hatch. So whatever my bait fish look like, where I'm fishing at, I'm gonna try to match that hatch the best way I can. Match my bait to what those bait fish look like, and also the size of what those bait fish look like. So my next bait for deep water bass fishing will be a 8XD, 6XD, 5XD, 10XD, whatever the case may be. Not just throwing the XD baits. You can throw the Rappalas. Rapala has some decent crankbaits. You can throw the Rapala DT4. They have DT6, 8, 10, and 16. I'm not sure if it goes past 16, but it probably does, but I'm just not 100% sure. So you got Rapala DT4, 6, 8, 10, 16, and you got the XD series of the KVD crankbaits. So any one of those baits that can dive deep off of drop-offs, or if they have some deep water cover down there, some deep water hard structure, and you could bounce that crankbait off of it, money. The last 2 baits that I would throw, I don't have one with me, but I have one of the others, will be a weighted underspin with a swim bait on it. Same thing, you can throw this shallow, you can throw this deep. This one right here has the little willow leaf on the back, and you can just put a paddle tail swim bait on it, something that mimics the bait fish that's in your area. Like I've been saying this whole video, match the hatch. Put a swim bait on there, paddle tail, throw this thing out, let it drop down. As it's dropping down, it's gonna do its little thing anyway. When you start reeling it, it's gonna do its thing anyway. I'll throw something like this on a spinning combo. I wouldn't necessarily worry about putting a leader on it that braid floats. So I'll probably run either fluorocarbon, I'm gonna say some heavy fluoro where I can get down deep with this. The other bait that I would throw besides this would be a soft plastic swim bait like a Largo shad, and that would be like on a 3/8 to a 1/2 ounce ball jig, and I'll pair that with the Storm Largo. And that I'll go with any color, like the albino shad color, pearl color, shad color, shadow one color, the blue color, anything that has that shad pattern to it. So my last baits that I would throw off of deep water will be an underspin and will be a Largo shad with a ball jig on it. And that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, the fall transition, it can be simplified. You can make it hard if you want to make it hard. If you know what you're looking for, you can have some of the best days of fishing. Right now, those bass are going to be feeding up to try to put on weight for the winter time. They want to get big for the winter time, put some fat on them. You know, those bass are going to be aggressive. They're going to be pinning bait fish. You can catch some giants right now. You know, besides that springtime bass fishing, you can catch some giants. But guys, I do want to mention, I don't have any one of these baits up here that I'm about to mention, but also always keep you a Texas rig setup. You know, keep your Texas rig set up with some type of bait that resembles something of a shad, some type of soft plastic. You can still use that Texas rig to pinpoint certain areas, pinpoint inside of laydowns, under docks, maybe a jig. A jig would be perfect for that. You know, a jig, you can change the colors on your skirts. You can mimic a shad color on your skirt, something like that. So a jig under docks, around structure, punching a jig through grass maybe. You know, so keep your Texas rig set up or keep your jig rigged up. That way you can still pinpoint areas. And that's pretty much it, guys. I want to thank you guys for tuning into my channel. Big 50 over and out.